Welcome back to Major Intonio's presentation of Napoleon's Marshals by R.P. Dunn-Pattison. Chapter 19, Claude Victor Perrin, Marshal, Duke of Belluno.
Not specially dowered by fortune with talents for war, but possessed of a resolute character, a high sense of honor, great courage, and that intrepidity which Napoleon maintained was so absolutely essential for high command, the Duke of Belluno is a striking instance of how large a factor is character in the struggle of life, which ends in the survival of the fittest. Born on December 7, 1764, at La Marche, among the mountains of the Vosges, Victor Perrin enlisted as a private at the age of 17 in the artillery regiment of Grenoble. The artillery was the finest arm of the old royal army, for there, and there alone, merit, not favor, was the key to promotion. Accordingly, the future marshal served his apprenticeship to arms under officers who knew their service and loved it. 10 years spent in the ranks under those who maintained strict discipline and were themselves punctilious in matters of duty, who exercised careful supervision over their men and materiel, and made a serious study of their profession, the art of war. These years, with their example, were not thrown away on the young soldier. When, in 1791, the upheaval of the Revolution threatened to subvert the service, Claude Victor, now a sergeant, in disgust at the license prevailing among the troops, applied for his discharge. 7 months of civil life proved enough for the sturdy ex-sergeant, and in October he enrolled himself in the volunteers of the Drôme, where in 9 months he forced himself by strength of character to the command of his battalion, for, as Napoleon aptly said, the times of revolution are the occasions for those soldiers who have insight and courage. After 6 months' drill under the hand of the ex-artilleryman, the volunteers of the Drôme were able to hold their own on the parade ground with the best regiments of the line. Well might their commander be proud of his battalion. In the fighting on the Var, Victor's volunteers greatly distinguished themselves, but it was at Toulon that they first showed their real worth. It was well for the colonel that he had brought his troops to a high pitch of morale, for, on starting to attack Mount Ferron, General Dugommier summoned him aside. "We must take the redoubt," he said, "or—" and he passed his hand in a suggestive way across his throat. In this attack, alone of all the corps engaged, the men of the Drôme stood their ground when the English made their counterattack. Amid cries of "Sauve qui peut!" they alone replied steadily to the murderous fire of the enemy, and as quietly as on parade they covered the route and slowly withdrew in good order. 3 weeks later came the opportunity of Victor's life in the assault on the Little Gibraltar, the seizure of which position forced the English to evacuate Toulon. The attack was planned by Bonaparte, and Victor had the good fortune to be chosen as one of the leaders. He was already the firm friend of the Corsican captain of artillery, and he now won his boundless admiration by his reckless bravery and his capacity for making his troops follow him. The 2 wounds which he received in the charge which carried the palisades were a cheap price to pay for the rank and glory which he was later to gain as a reward for the way in which he flung his shattered column against the second line of defense. His immediate recompense was the post of General of Brigade in the Army of the Eastern Pyrenees. From the Spanish campaign, Victor returned, in 1795, to Italy with an enhanced reputation and some knowledge of mountain warfare, which was to stand him in good stead later. When, in 1796, Bonaparte took command of the Army of Italy, he found Victor still General of Brigade, but reputed one of the bravest men in that army of heroes. The campaign of 1796 brought him still more to the front. Dago, Mondovì, Peschiera, San Marco, Cheria, and the fights round Mantua proved his courage and capacity to exact the most from his troops. But it was his maneuvering on January 16, 1797, at St. George, outside Mantua, which proved his real ability. For there, with but 2 French regiments, he forced the whole division of General Provera, 7,000 strong, to lay down its arms. Bonaparte chose the conqueror of Provera to lead the French army to invade the Papal States. This was Victor's first independent command, but owing to the poor condition of the Papal troops, it was no severe test of his ability. Still, It gained for him his step as general of division and confirmed his chief's high opinion of him. During the year following the Peace of Campo Formio, General Victor held several posts in France, but was back again in Italy in 1799 to take part in the disastrous campaign against the Austrians and Russians. Detached by General Moreau to aid MacDonald on the Trebia, he, for the first time, showed that jealousy which was such a blemish in his character. And during the retreat, he paid so little attention to orders that he was almost overwhelmed by the enemy. Not from cowardice, but from his desire to escape MacDonald's control, he abandoned his guns and withdrew into the mountains to try to join Moreau. But MacDonald saved the guns, and sarcastically wrote to his insubordinate lieutenant that he had secured the guns, but found neither friend nor foe. Victor was serving under MASSÉNA when Bonaparte returned from Egypt. Stern Republican, sprung from the ranks, he hated the idea of a dictatorship, and did not hide from superiors or inferiors his dislike of the coup d'état of the 18th Brumaire. Indeed, so subversive of discipline became his attitude and his speeches to his soldiers that MASSÉNA was forced to remove him from his command and report him to the first consul. In retirement and disgrace at Monaco, he saw with dismay the armies of the Allies surging up to the French frontier. Putting aside all personal animosity, he wrote to his former friend and commander with no complaints or prayers to be reinstated, but giving a clear exposition of the state of affairs in Italy and of the means necessary to restore the prestige of the French arms, and actually proposing the plan, which the first consul had already conceived, of crossing the Alps and falling on the communications of the enemy. Bonaparte was greatly struck with this letter. Perhaps also he called to mind his former friendship, in the days when the old ex-artillery sergeant used to walk round his batteries at Toulon, and doubtless he remembered his stubborn courage and tenacity in the fights round Mantua. At any rate, he summoned him to Paris, received him with marks of affection, and sent him off at once to command a division of the Army of Reserve. But though he forgave him outwardly, Bonaparte was too shrewd a judge of men not to see that his old comrade was always dangerous when not employed. While busy drilling and supervising his troops, the general had no time to think about politics and the theories of government. So, as first consul and emperor, Napoleon saw to it that the ex-artilleryman had plenty of employment. During the Marengo campaign, the general gained fresh honors. Luckily, it was his old friend Lannes with whom he had to cooperate, and Lannes willingly acknowledged his loyal aid at Montebello, for on the day he received his dukedom, he embraced Victor, saying, "My friend, it is to you I owe my title." At Marengo, he again had to work with Lannes, and it was due to their admirable cooperation and stubbornness that the retreat did not become a rout, and that Desaix had time to return to the field and allow the first consul to fight another battle and turn a defeat into a victory. But though Napoleon gave him his due share of the glory of Marengo, and mentioned him first in dispatches and presented him with a sword of honor, he yet remembered his former hostility, and while constantly employing him, took care to keep him as much as possible out of France. So for 2 years after Marengo, General Victor held the post of commander-in-chief in the Army of Holland. Then, in 1802, he was appointed Captain General of Louisiana. But fortune here defeated the first consul's intentions, and the expedition to America never sailed. Victor was sent back to his post in Holland and kept there till February 1805, when he was appointed minister plenipotentiary at the Danish court. During these years, it was clear to everybody that he was in disgrace, and it was due to the boldness of his friend, Marshal Lannes, that he was recalled to active service and once again given a chance of distinguishing himself. In September 1806, owing to the promotion of his chief staff officer, Lannes had to find a new chief of the staff for his corps, and he applied to the emperor to be allowed to appoint General Victor. Napoleon hesitated for a moment, then, mindful of the number of troops under arms and the necessity of employing really efficient officers on the staff, he acquiesced in the marshal's choice, saying, "He is a really sound man, and one in whom I have complete confidence, and I will give him proof of this when the occasion arrives." Jena and Pultusk added to the general's distinguished record, and the emperor began to treat him once again with favor, and in January 1807 entrusted him with the new 10th Corps of the Grand Army. Soon after he had taken over his new command, he had the bad luck to be captured by a patrol of the enemy while driving with a single aide-de-camp near Stettin. Luckily for him, he had by now completely won back the goodwill of the emperor. Napoleon at once set about to effect his exchange, and in a few days he was back again with his corps. At the beginning of June, when Bernadotte fell ill, the emperor summoned him to the front to take command of the First Corps, and it was in this capacity that he was present at the Battle of Friedland, and in that terrible struggle he won his baton. Rewards now came speedily, for after Tilsit he was entrusted with the government of Prussia, and in 1808 created Duke of Belluno. From Prussia the Marshal was summoned, in the autumn of 1808, to take command of the First Corps of the Army of Spain. And for the next 3 years, he saw continuous service in the peninsula. During the first few months of his career, their fortune smiled upon him. At Espinosa, he dealt General Blake a smashing blow. Later, he led the van of the army under Napoleon in the march on Madrid, and forced the enemy's entrenched position in the pass of the Somosierra by a charge of his Polish lancers. From Madrid, he was dispatched to the south to keep the enemy at some distance from the capital. And at Ulces and Medellin, he proved that the Spanish generals were no match for him and his seasoned troops. But unfortunately, he smirched the fame of these victories by the license he permitted his soldiers. At Ulces, he allowed the town to be sacked and executed 69 of the most prominent of the citizens, including some monks, while he ordered all prisoners who were unable to march to be shot. At Medellin, the French bayoneted the Spanish wounded. Further, like many another commander, he did not scruple to make the most of his successes in his reports, and the Spaniards assert that he eked out his trophies by taking down the old battle flags of the Knights of Santiago from the church of Ulces. After Medellin, his successes ended. Placed under the command of Joseph and Jourdan, whom he despised, in great straits to feed his army in a country which was really a wilderness, worried by constant contradictory orders, it was in no pleasant mood that he at last found himself under the personal command of King Joseph at Talavera. Anxious to maintain his independence and to show off his military skill, he attempted by himself to surprise the English wing of the Allied army. Consequently, he committed King Joseph and Jourdan to an action which they did not wish to fight, and by refusing to cooperate with the other corps commanders, he brought defeat upon the French army. For, as Napoleon wrote to Joseph, as long as you attack good troops, like the English, in good positions, without reconnoitering them, you will lead your men to death on pure pert. After Talavera, Victor's independent career came to an end. He was placed under the orders of Marshal SOULT and sent to besiege Cadiz, before which place he lay till he was summoned to take part in the Russian campaign. But before leaving Cadiz, he fought one more action against the British, when General Graham seized the opportunity of SOULT's absence to attempt to break up the siege, and he had once again to acknowledge defeat. When at Barassa, the little column of 4,000 British turned at bay and boldly attacked and defeated 9,000 chosen French infantry under the Marshal himself. In Russia, the Duke of Belluno was saved some of the greatest hardships, for his corps was on the line of communication, and it was not till the day before the Battle of the Beresina that he actually joined the retreating army, in time to earn further glory by covering the passage of the river, though at the cost of more than half his corps. During 1813, he fought at Dresden and at Leipzig, and at the commencement of 1814 was entrusted with the defense of the Vosges, but he soon had to fall back on the Marne. At Saint-Dizier and Brienne he bore himself bravely, but at Montereau he fell into disgrace. He neglected to hold the bridge on the Seine, and thus completely spoiled Napoleon's combination. The emperor was furious, and deprived him of the command of his corps and told him to leave the army, but the marshal refused to go. "I will shoulder my musket," said he. "Victor has not forgotten his old occupation. I will take my place in the guard." At such devotion the emperor relented. "Well, Victor," he said, stretching out his hand, "remain with us. I cannot restore to you your corps, which I have bestowed on Girard, but I give you 2 divisions of the Guard. However, the Marshal did not long occupy his new position, for he was severely wounded at Craonne and forced to go home. On Napoleon's abdication, the Duke of Belluno swore allegiance to the Bourbons and kept it, for on the return of Napoleon from Elba, he withdrew to Ghent with Louis XVIII. On the Second Restoration, he was created a peer of France and nominated one of the 4 major generals of the Royal Guard. Though never an imperialist, and at heart a republican, it was Napoleon's treatment of him at Montereau, which recalled the old grievance of his disgrace in 1800 and turned him into a royalist. The Marshal earned the undying hatred of many of his old comrades by the severity he displayed when charged with examining the conduct of officers of all grades who had served under the usurpation. But, though steadfast in his adherence to the monarchy, the Duke of Belluno still clung to his liberal ideals, and it was for this reason that in 1821 Villèle invited him to join the cabinet as Minister for War. It was a strange position for the ex-sergeant of artillery, but he filled it admirably and brought considerable strength to the ministry, in that as a soldier of fortune, a self-made man, he conciliated the liberals, and as a resolute character, a firm royalist, and a man of intrepidity and honor, he had the confidence and esteem of the Conservative Party. It was during his term of office that a French army once again invaded Spain, and thanks in no small degree to his knowledge of the country and to his business capacity that it suffered no reverse. When the Bourbon dynasty fell in July 1830, the Duke of Belluno took the oath of allegiance to the new government, but never again entered public life, and on March 1, 1841, he died in Paris at the age of 77.
This concludes Chapter 19 of Napoleon's Marshals by R.P. Dunn-Pattison. Join us also for Chapter 20 about Emmanuel de Grouchy. Subscribe to Major Intonio's channel. We'll get back to you next week. Thank you very much, and so long.